Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Okay, so this is going to sound so weird, but it was sometime between this episode and last, so maybe Thursday night, I woke up like totally awake. You know when you wake up and you're like, I could go and just do my day now? Mm-hmm. I'm so awake. I had a vivid dream that the Detroit Red Wings signed Mitch Marner. And I was like, is this a sign from the universe? It was insane. Like, usually I'm just like, this is a dumb dream, like what's happening? But I woke up and I was like dead certain that the Detroit Red Wings had signed Mitch Marner. Like, it was, you know, when I say things and I'm just like, yeah, it comes all back and it's like, okay, I can't believe that turned out to be real.
Yeah, Lobstradamus. You predict everything.
But this one was like, this was crazy. Like, this was like complete and utter certainty from the universe that this was happening. So it's either happening or
you teleport into another universe.
Yeah.
And just jump back.
Like, quantum entanglement has happened and I'm in a different timeline and I'm getting signals from a different universe, but it's crazy.
Would it be the best thing or the worst thing in this podcast history if another Evan just walked into the room in the middle of this episode?
The show would be infinitely better. There's no way between two Evans, not one or of you or I would die, though. The Evans would kill one of us for sure. They couldn't bear both of us. But Lobster, like you've predicted,
they've never been that intense of a epiphany.
This is like a three-eyed raven. Your visions are becoming a lot more. Dude, if this happens, we are pre-recording everything, and whatever you say, I'm putting money down on it. I'm going to start betting.
It was so weird. I've never, first of all, as soon as I leave this house, I don't think about it at all. So the fact that I woke up on a Thursday, I guess at like 2 a.m. and was like, holy crap, the Red Wings are signing Mitch Marner. It has to be a sign for this universe or another.
If this comes to fruition, we got to take him on like an Aaron Rodgers darkness retreat and see if we can coax the lottery numbers out of him or something.
We'll coax something out of him. I'll tell you that much for free.
That'll be good off-season content.
Yeah. I mean, but he did that in complete darkness, so that's going to be interesting to film. Man, I'm not even kidding. Of everything that's been out there, that is the best indicator that I have that I'm going off of, that Mitch Marner might be coming to Detroit.
I don't know what to make of it, but it was wild. So maybe fingers crossed.
Sources say, my source is just Evan's gut. All right, folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, Evan's premonitions, and a lot more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of Lobstradamus, man, you just got to go with that.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, it's a play on the Nostradamus. It's a good Wikipedia rabbit hole if you ever need it. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking some future projections, only a year out for us, and we're not doing Evan's premonitions kind of thing, but future projections for Red Wings rookies next season, or those who are hoping to be Red Wings rookies, and then some more thoughts on roster construction in terms of players who might be available, who might fit into the depth roles, the top 6. That whole conversation is going to continue. We are going to get into everything that's happening in the NHL, the 2 conference final series wrapped up, bit takeaways and drama from how those ended, and then Stanley Cup Final predictions, more NHL news and discussion before we jump into overtime. Very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to our bonus episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun, we have thoughts with Evan, which sometimes, predict the future, and most of the time it's just
utter nonsense.
Yeah, Evan lore. And you also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, a fantastic community.
I can't wait for this one with the teaser Evan gave us.
Yeah, I'm curious. And you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, going directly to our Patreon supporters in season, and in the off season we have a lot planned. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. Red Wings rookies next year. We keep talking about players who might come in. Who are they going to sign? Who are they going to trade for? Which RFA could they, maybe give an offer sheet to even? But we haven't talked a lot about which Red Wings rookies could make an impression. And this is something that you've wanted to talk about for a little while, Brad. And so we're going to go through some of the more likely names in terms of who you might see in no particular order and talk about, their chances to make the team, what to look out for in preseason and training camp, and if they make the team, what to expect in all likelihood. Now, the preface here is take all of this with a grain of salt. Like, this is just, what's most likely, but you've seen rookies completely fail and struggle to take hold of a roster spot. You've seen rookies struggle and then really seize a spot. Think Johansson last year. And you've seen rookies blow people away like Marco Kasper did. So there's a big range of outcomes, but this is just where things are at. So why don't we start with Nate Danielson, who everyone is going to be looking at this season to be this season's Marco Kasper based on how things went.
Yeah, of all the prospects that have it, call it reasonable chance to make the Red Wings next year, I think his is going to be the most dependent on camp and preseason because he's had a couple really good camps and preseasons under his belt. He played a really big role in Grand Rapids this year to mixed results, but we'll call it mostly good, like tilt the scales to the good side. Not quite the production he wanted, but as Dan Watson has said, and even said on our podcast, they asked him to play big minutes, tough matchups, big role. So naturally, that's going to suppress some offense when you're going up against other teams' top lines, especially as a rookie frequently. And obviously, the caveat to everything we're going to talk about depends what the Red Wings do in trade and free agency. Some of these prospects might be gone, might not be that many roster spots, if any, available if they go super aggressive. But I think at 4, Danielson's got the inside track because he can play center and you can always kick him to wing to learn, just like the Red Wings did with Marco Kasper last year. His production in his rookie year in the AHL was very, very similar to Marco Kasper's, and that was his first pro year, whereas Kasper had, 2 SHL seasons under his belt at that point. So given the learning curve Danielson had to go through this year, again, I would tilt the scales on the positive side, even if you're comparing him to Kasper. His playoffs in the HL left a lot to be desired, but I think that's true of damn near the whole team. So I don't know if we can pin that on many guys individually. I think it's going to be a season where the Red Wings, much like last year, don't see a lot of rookies opening night, but I think Danielson's got the best chance.
I appreciate what you brought up about Watson saying on our live show in Grand Rapids, that the Griffins were asking him to do a lot. And so there's a natural comparison, again, to Marco Kasper's season prior, where Kasper maybe flourished a bit more in terms of the eye test and some numbers, depending on what you were looking at. But he was playing really tough minutes. And the context was different, too. Like, the Griffins this season, because the Red Wings took them away, lost really important players at different points of the season. Soderblom came up and stayed. They lost Watson, at various different points. They lost Shine, and like they would lose these players at important stretches, and it really kind of disrupted the Griffins. And not that the Griffins were completely excused. I think that was a really disappointing last stint and end to their season, and that's something that the Red Wings are and should be a little bit concerned about at least. But still, Danielson, being a young player asked to shoulder all of those tough minutes, like, I'm not saying it's an amazing thing and what incredible signs he's going to come in and absolutely shine right away no matter what, but I would just say I wouldn't assign too many red flags to him specifically. So yeah, I have to agree. I think it's going to come down to how he does in training camp and preseason, but I think he has all the cards here. He's had 2 training camps and preseasons. The first one where he had no business making the team, I think you could have made the argument that they could have put him on and made 2 seasons ago his rookie season. It's for the best that they didn't, but based on how poor the Red Wings roster was and how well he performed, he was one of their best 12 forwards in that preseason. So he knows what to walk into. He knows what to expect. He understands what he has to do this offseason and continue to build his game and his body and his strength, etc. Everything is poised for him to seize the moment, and if he doesn't, it's going to ultimately fall on his shoulders. The only thing I could see pushing him out is if the Red Wings go and make a ton of moves for guys who need NHL roster spots, whether that's fair or not. But I think they'd have room for one rookie one way or the other. And if he can't squeeze out, a fringe 12, 13 forward guy, then ultimately it falls on him. So I'm pretty hopeful. I think he has a decent shot at being on the opening night roster, but I agree with Brad. It's not a guarantee in my mind.
I don't think there's really any negative outcome for Nate Danielson going into next season. One, he makes the Red Wings and he gets to develop at the NHL level, and we get to see what he can do in year one. Or year two, he goes down back to Grand Rapids and he continues to build upon a season where he was asked to do far more than what a rookie should be doing at the AHL level and was able to tread water. So for me, yeah, like what you guys said, it's going to come down to a lot to the preseason, how he shows, but ultimately, I don't think there's a wrong decision with his deployment or his path for the next season. If he has a great training camp and it turns out it's just like we're sending him down because he's got waiver exemption and we want to keep some bottom six forward in the lineup, then that's where the problem for me will begin. But I think in a vacuum for Nate Danielson, there's no bad approach going into next season.
And if you look at what the Red Wings need to, he could be a solution there, and that's provided he does stick, right? Like if he sticks the way Marco Kasper stuck, okay, if you need Marco Kasper for the top six on the wing, that's great. If Nate Danielson can hold his own on a middle six center role, it's a big ask. Like that's a massive if, but that's somewhere where he could potentially contribute. And that's like a ideal scenario. The most likely thing is that he breaks in on the wing, and it takes a while for players to stick at center if they ever will at the NHL level, which isn't a guarantee. So I think that's where positionally the Red Wings are going to be hoping that between him and Kasper, they get at least one middle six center for 82 games this season.
Maybe we should back up ever so slightly and talk about the philosophy of having rookies on the team, because we talked about it at length at the start of last year that the Red Wings can't have 0 rookies in this lineup and then the next season have 4 and the season after have 3. Going into next season, how many rookies do you think the Red Wings should realistically absorb into the Red Wings lineup?
I think this year is going to be a little trickier on that because, as we're going to talk about and go through, I don't think there's a lot of guys that are right there on the doorstep. I think most of the guys we're going to talk about are going to need some seasoning still in the AHL and some time to develop. That being said, the Red Wings had, for all intents and purposes, 4 rookies for a good chunk of last season. And I think Johansson was the only one on the opening night roster, and he didn't even play. So that's also one thing I want to point out with Danielson. Just because he's not on the opening night roster, I'm not super concerned about that, even if he has a good camp. We said the same thing about Kasper last year, and
he was up after like 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, he didn't even make it. They didn't even make it through October before he was up. And obviously we saw
he was up after 5 games.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's something very similar with Danielson if after 5 to 15 games he's up this year. And given that they absorbed 4 rookies last year between Kasper and Edvinsson and Johansson and Soderblom, it takes the stress off this season a little bit, because if you only get 1 or 2, it's not the end of the world. Because if we're looking at the key prospects, yeah, you want at least one of them up this year. But I think Sandin Pellikka and MBN and some of these other guys, you can probably make a coherent argument it's better for them to stay in Grand Rapids, even if there is spots available in Detroit. But that all being said, yeah, it's still a slow process to rebuild. You need at least a couple for a majority of the season. Again, pick any 2 based on performance. Don't care who, don't care positions, but keep going that slow steady. Because again, the Red Wings regressed this year, but I would say the 4 guys who were rookies last year, between the 4 of them, were all positive contributors. They weren't the reason the team regressed. They were a lot of the bright spots on the team. So it's good that proof is in the pudding for the Red Wings now that you don't need to be afraid to bring these guys up, and in some cases throw them into big roles right away and watch them thrive. Now, again, every player's different, but if we're sitting here at Christmas and Danielson's centering the second line, I don't think any of us would be stunned. Now, probably not a good sign for how the season's going if that happens.
Or a great sign. A great sign.
But I don't think any of us would be stunned if that's the case. I wouldn't consider it likely because, again, just like Raymond and Seider, you got to remember there's exceptions to rules. Last year, Kasper was the exception. You can't expect a guy like Danielson to come in and do what Kasper did last year right away. That's why we spent so much of the season heaping praise on him, because it was so outside of the norm, and he did exceed expectations so much. And every once in a while, it's going to happen. But again, with Danielson, if he's not on the opening night roster, that's fine. If he's up November, December, that's probably still fine. As long as we don't go a majority of the season with 0, I think the number of rookies this year is fine.
Yeah, and I think there's some scar tissue here as well with the fan base. Like last season, we were wondering a little bit, is this going to come back? Because a detail I want to add to what Evan primed this conversation with is I'm not necessarily a subscriber of you can't have 4 or you're not necessarily going to have 4. Or you can't have big batches. It was more driven by there was a chunk of guys where I think the Red Wings needed to know what they had in them. And Kasper was a big one. Johansson, waiver eligibility drove that more than anything. And that probably saved him because he did not have a strong start to his season, but he really found his groove after McLellan came in. So I've really kind of come off the idea that you need to have 3 or you can't have 4. I think it's more that the NHL and NHL teams very rarely have big swaths of rookies come in and hold a spot. Like the Red Wings season last year was more of an aberration than not. And I honestly, the scar tissue here is that I think the Red Wings have really not done a lot of what used to frustrate me with rookies in the past. Maybe a few guys here and there, but I think for the most part, if you look at it, the way they've handled their young talent, yeah, I would have liked to have seen Edvinsson up sooner. But in the end, like, I do think Edvinsson was worth a point the season where they missed by a point. But that's like, I'm narrowing it down to something where there's a butterfly effect and who's to say one way or another, right? But by and large, I think they've done well. Like, I think Kasper, you have to give the team credit for how they handled Kasper. You have to give the team credit for not rushing Danielson. You have to give the team credit for, this is going way back to the Blashill era, but Seider and Raymond sees their spots. Some of it's circumstantial, yeah, but I think this is more scar tissue for me than anything else about nervousness about Red Wings and rookies. For the most part, they kind of fall into, yeah, that worked out, or they handled that well. Am I just being a homer? I don't know.
Well, we've got 30 days and we'll find out what direction the team believes. If they believe in the rookie movement going forward, or if they fill the roster again with journeymen. We'll call them journeymen. And that might be a compliment where it's not deserved, but we will find out very soon. And that will almost certainly dictate this conversation again in 30 plus days.
Let's move on to the next rookie. And I think this guy's actually easy because in my mind, this is fully dependent on health. Carter Mazur plays the kind of game that the Red Wings will want, even if he's not, effective in terms of production right off the hop, just the way he plays hockey. The Red Wings need that sandpaper and energy in the lineup. It's just about staying healthy.
So whose spot is he taking?
Anybody in the bottom 6.
I understand that from like a skilled perspective and like a long-term, good move for the organization. But at the end of the day, there's contracts. And if you can't move guys out, like, are the Red Wings stuck? Like, I fully agree Carter Mazur should be on this team and his health really dictates that, but they got to move somebody out, right?
Well, I'll push back on the gimme status that he has right now. I think going into last season, he was right on the verge, and everybody could have made a coherent argument that he should be a full-time Red Wing. Obviously, he got called up, played like 12 seconds before his season ended, which sucks, but it's the reality of the world.
And he missed a good chunk of the season, too, after taking a high hit in the AHL.
Well, that was the point I was going to make, is he didn't play a lot of hockey last year. So to ask a guy who essentially has never played in the NHL, like he played a shift, to barely play hockey for a year and then walk into the lineup opening night, that's a tall task.
That's fair.
I think he's probably one of the stronger candidates to just, hey, buddy, go down to Grand Rapids. We'll see in November type of thing.
Yeah.
And then between him and Danielson, whoever's performing better, you're getting the first call up. Because to your point a bit ago about the scar tissue from Red Wings not bringing up prospects, we're going back to the season before last. But the nuance of that was the Red Wings were remarkably healthy that year.
Yeah, weirdly.
weirdly healthy. Like
we were
there
waiting
was,
for a defenseman to go down so Edvinsson could come up, and it happened for like 2 seconds.
well, and it didn't. And when it finally happened regularly, wasn't that like Walman in March when Edvinsson came up?
It was right at the end.
It was weirdly. Obviously, it's a positive, but like weird how the Red Wings were so healthy, which never gave them much opportunity to bring guys up. So I can't expect that to happen again. It's, if I had 2 nickels for it happening twice, like I don't think I'm getting that second nickel. You know what I mean? Like, so I think Mazur, Danielson are both good candidates to compete for a spot on the opening night roster, if there's one. But I think it's also very much in the cards. Both of them go to Grand Rapids, see how they do. And then when that first injury happens, again, depending where in the lineup, whoever's performing better is coming up. Now you're a Red Wing. Don't lose your spot. Show us you belong here. And again, we've seen willingness from the Red Wings. Kasper last year, if you earn that spot, we will not send you back.
Yeah.
So I could see between those two specifically a situation like that arising.
Why don't we go to now, I think, one of the more popular names to talk about. We're going to move away from forwards. Let's go straight to goalies here. Sebastian Cossa. And it's been a roller coaster ride, especially this past season. I mean, the story of him coming back and winning the game, and in Buffalo, he didn't get the start, and the whole, paper moves being called up, and it was a whole ordeal with Cossa. And there's a big chorus of the fan base who was saying, these goalies suck. Why aren't we bringing up Cossa? There's another big chorus of the fan base saying, this defense sucks. You can't put Cossa behind that. He got that one win, and it kind of reignited that from the one side at least. But then Kossa's season kind of fell apart with the Griffins, and he really didn't do a lot to inspire confidence that he's a lock for next season. And you can see that in Steve Yzerman's moves, where he went out and acquired Peter Mrazek to play alongside Cam Talbot. I would imagine Alex Lyon, his most likely outcome is that he's gone. You never say never. You don't know what will happen, but I think someone will pay him more than the Red Wings are willing to for a third goalie. But Kossa's task here is to come in and have the kind of training camp and preseason that makes Steve Yzerman and co forget about the last, January onwards or whatever it was. And that's no pun intended, because he's huge, but that's a tall task.
Well, even if he has a good camp, with goalie, it's such a mental position. I don't think anybody, Red Wings brass included, has any questions about Kossa's talent to do it at the NHL level. We've seen him have stretches in Grand Rapids where he is utterly dominant. And you watch that and you go, yeah, that's an NHL goaltender all day long. But the elite NHL goalies, even the good NHL goalies, are the ones who can keep it on the rails for most of the season. And we haven't seen that from Cossa yet. So even if he comes in and sets the world on fire in training camp, yeah, he'll might get a look in Detroit. But the whole thing with him is they got to see like a 3-month stretch of consistent goaltending, no more than a couple really off nights. And let me be clear, every goalie has bad nights, but you can't let one bad night turn into 2, turn into 3, turn into a week, turn into a month.
Yeah.
Which towards the end of the season is what happened with Cossa. One bad game turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into a month, turned into the playoffs. I'm curious more than anything to see how the Red Wings management would approach if he has a really good camp. Because if he goes out there and he's clearly the best goalie in camp, clearly the best goalie in preseason, I still think it's likely he starts in Grand Rapids for that reason. And obviously coupled with the point you brought up, they have 2 NHL goalies under contract who aren't bad NHL goalies. You could make the case they're both at least average. So it's not like they're looking at Talbot and Mrazek and going, oh my God, what are we going to do? You can see reality with those two where you can get at least average goaltending throughout the season for a majority of the games. Not going to steal you many games, but also won't lose you many either. So I think they're in a spot where however they feel about Cossa right at this moment won't be severely impacted by how he plays in preseason one way or the other.
Didn't Peter Mrazek have like the worst goals against average out of all starting goalies last year?
He was
Chicago.
I'll just answer the question.
I can't remember what stat specifically, whether it was expected goals or goals against.
It wasn't good.
I'm not
whatever
saying
average,
I'm not saying he should not be there, but I'm just saying there is a world where he is better than one or two of the goalies in Detroit.
Okay, but you're forgetting. I think you're being extremely.
I'm not forgetting.
No, you're not. Evan Lobzig is not forgetting.
I knew that one wouldn't get by as soon as I said it.
The man who was cursed to see is also cursed to forget.
Yes,
but you're also being incredibly disrespectful to the chronic ailment that he carries, which is every other year-itis. The same thing that Jeremy Swayman
that's
has.
right. Yes,
and I'm pretty sure we're coming on to a strong year for him, if my math is correct. So he might be in the Vezina conversation this year.
Well, so was Cam Talbot for 10 games.
Yeah.
Buddy, 21. Let's be real.
Okay, sorry.
But also, we got to factor in how he performed last year. Honestly, doesn't matter to this conversation because we heard Yzerman specifically say, we liked acquiring him because he had that extra year on his contract. He made that deal with full intentions of, he's a Red Wing next year. We're going to count on him. And before his injury, like, he wasn't exactly late in the world on fire with Detroit, but he wasn't horrible either. So it's like,
he had a pretty decent stretch there for it was like a small sample.
Very small sample size, but like, he did nothing in Detroit that's going to make Steve Yzerman go, ooh, I made a bad call there. So he's probably still got the full mindset.
He was too busy spending that brain power on Eric Gustafsson.
If he's bad, if he comes in and he's bad, Mrazek, it's just nothing we haven't seen before. The number on the contract is a bit like, why would you go out and acquire that? But then you see what backup goalies are going to go for this offseason, and the number's actually not that insane. I'm curious to see what Lyon will go for, assuming he leaves. But yeah, anyways, with Cossa, I would say his most likely outcome is that, like Brad said, it's probably Grand Rapids. I'd imagine he gets, spot games here and there based on injury, or if he performs so well, they give it to him as like a, hey, you earned it. I would imagine he's under a dozen games. If I'm setting over under at 12.5, I think he's under. It's not impossible, but I would say like 70% chance that he's under.
So I think the most telling thing of where the organization is at on Cossa is going to be if they do anything else in net. Because I think you could look at Grand Rapids right now and feel pretty comfortable with Cossa Wallinder. Cossa gets a majority of the games. Wallinder was fine in the ECHL last year. He comes up as a backup. You've got two mountains between the pipe given any game. But if Mrazek and Talbot, and given their age and with Mrazek injury history, gets hurt, I'd call it likely, are they looking for a Jack Campbell to go platoon with Cossa and Grand Rapids and they go up to spot fill if someone gets hurt? Or are they going to be perfectly content saying, all right, we're sending him to Grand Rapids, but if someone gets injured, he's the guy coming up?
I suppose it depends how many games you think you can get out of a healthy Cam Talbot and or a Peter Mrazek. Because if you think you're only going to get, so if one of those guys go down and you're like, we were only planning to play Cam Talbot, I don't know, making this number up, 35 games.
Yeah, that's probably ideal.
Well, then you're going to have to call up someone who can, play decent hockey. Like, you can't, no offense to Jack Campbell, but I have less confidence in him coming up to the Red Wings than I would Sebastian Cossa, even though Jack Campbell has played in the NHL. So I think it all depends on how they want to strategize the game management for those two goalies.
Now, I said with Danielson, the cards are all in his hand. Same thing goes with Cossa. Like,
you think? Well, okay, let's.
I don't think they are.
Let's say he comes into camp and is just out of this world. Like, he is by far the best of the three goalies.
Then the worst case scenario, if that's the case, if he's performing as he's supposed to, Red Wings goaltending, what's the story been? If they start the year hot, they peter out by like December. If they start the year cold, they're hot for like 6 weeks starting November and they peter out by December. Red Wings goaltending constantly falls apart when the year turns over, somewhere thereabouts, and it's part of their collapse and miss out of the playoffs when they previously had a shot. So all he has to do is be strong when all else fails. But all else being the Red Wings. So I'm saying the cards are all in his hand. It doesn't mean he's going to come up and be the backup or like play 30 games for the Red Wings from day one. But I do think, I think until history proves us otherwise, or if the every other year itis is actually true with Mrazek, Red Wings goaltending will fail again, and he has to be there to seize the moment.
But that's cards not in his hand. That's a lot of ifs.
I'm saying it's guaranteed to happen.
I will concede it is highly likely.
Yeah.
But like you said, though, he could come in to camp, dominate, and still go to Grand Rapids. He did his part, but circumstances sent him to Grand Rapids. He could be on fire for the first 3 months of the season, but if nobody gets hurt and they're playing okay, it's probably not coming up. I think the further you get into the season, the more control he has to show that he can have that consistency and to maybe make the Red Wings think, okay, he's definitely better than one of the two guys we're trotting out at this point. We got to try it. And of course, the Red Wings season is going to dictate a lot of that. If it goes really off the rails, they're going to be like, well, hell, let's just see how he is.
Yeah.
If they're in a playoff spot come January, you know how NHL organizations operate. They are not going to be eager to throw a rookie goalie in there and rest their playoff hopes on someone who's played 2 periods and change of NHL hockey. So he's got control of how he plays, but I think the fate of his season's entirely in Yzerman, Mrazek, and Talbot's hands.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crux of it, right? Like, rookie goalies in the NHL suck. Like, statistically, they suck. It's an extremely hard position to come in and play. You can't expect them to be, prime Carey Price. It just doesn't really happen that way.
Well, we won't know if they don't let him do it, though.
Hey, you get a Cam Ward every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, which talented Cam Ward, the goalie or the quarterback?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. All right. I mean, obviously, Cossa's a contentious one. These ones will be a little bit easier to do. Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, who the Red Wings were hoping would stay in North America last year, he chose to go back to Europe. And it wasn't what they preferred, but I think, as that story played out, it was just like they respected his decision, and that was what he felt most comfortable doing. He'll be in North America this year. And you talked about it on a recent episode, Brad. He didn't go over and light the world on fire in Europe. You might have looked at that and said, wow, I'm kind of disappointed by the production. But then you saw how he performed for Grand Rapids and at the Worlds in international play.
Skellefteå in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you look at this
game turned on.
Yeah, I was saying, you look at the small sample size, SHL playoffs, Grand Rapids playoffs, World Championships, phenomenal.
And not even just
you
small,
look
recent.
at just those 3 time periods, we'll call it, you would sit here and go, oh, he's challenging for a spot opening night. And he might, because he's got one advantage over the other prospect in the system, the physicality. That is the one guy in Grand Rapids you are definitely looking at and going, we are not worried about him adjusting to the physicality of the NHL. But you look at the entirety of his regular season, and it leaves a lot of questions because the production wasn't there, the consistency wasn't there, the physicality was there, but on the SHL ice, it's harder. I think that translates better to the smaller ice. But I think he's one of those guys that if he comes in and has a huge preseason, he could force their hand. But let me be clear, the only way he's making the Red Wings is if he leaves them no damn choice. He's got to be undeniable. The phrase we've used over the years is kick the door in. He can't have a pretty good preseason and we're all sitting here happy with it. It's got to be, he was one of the best players on the team, full stop, this preseason. Pretty good, even really good, means Grand Rapids to adjust to get it. Unbelievable gets him on the Red Wings. I think Mazur and Danielson walk into camp with the edge. If they're giving a rookie 1 or 2 spots, those are the 2 guys who are getting priority just because of North American track record. But if he is clearly better than them and most of the Red Wings roster, combine that with his absolute physicality, I could see a reality he walks onto the team.
I think for me, out of all the guys we're going to talk about, there's not really a priority in terms of the players. We need to see what some of these guys have, and there's a lot of question marks around all of them, what they'll have at the NHL level. I would have no problem with MBN being on the Red Wings. So I have no problem with him going back to Grand Rapids. I think him developing that consistency at the AHL level and being able to just run around and be a menace down there would do wonders for his game. And then he can come into the NHL and, he's already got the consistency. He knows what to do on a North American ice sheet. So really for me, there's no lose for him either.
And I don't know where else to bring this up in the conversation, so I'm just going to bring it up now.
That's the podcast, baby.
Yep. Because it gets dumber. This is about a TikTok.
That's podcast. Oh,
yeah.
Jesus.
This is about a TikTok from the Detroit Red Wings account, for what it's worth. I don't know how many people saw it. It was, they were just doing like 20 questions or something like that with ASP and MBN. And they were like both on camera and they were asking them questions. Did we overestimate how big MBN is, or did we underestimate how big ASP is? Because they look damn near the same size. Standing next to each other on camera for 3 minutes. There was like an inch or two difference between them.
This is like the Tom Cruise thing where they purposely like film up on him so he doesn't look as short.
Yeah, I was watching that and I forgot 90% of the answers they said because I'm like, is ASP 6 feet or is MBN 6 feet? Like, what am I missing here?
MBN is listed as 6'1", and Sandin Pellikka is what, 5'11"?
Like, he's got to be 5'11" and a half. Like,
if they were on Tinder, the girls would be like, that's a chasm.
He's listed as 5'10", which if I know anything, he's 5'9" and 3/4 like I am, but you just say 5'10".
But you put him next to MBN. He was right there.
Does he wear lifts? Is that the thing?
Mid-90s Spice Girls platforms. It had to have been. They were 5 inches tall.
I vote ASP gross. And one thing I'll add to the NBN conversation, I agree with what you guys said in terms of the kind of game he plays and his opportunity, and that he actually is kind of a dark horse candidate to make this team. The small sample sizes of when he did well, I think the important thing is those are all recent and they're, signs of progression. And it wasn't just random smatterings of solid play throughout a season. That is about as the best sign you could ask for, is like international play with a brand new team and in his team's playoffs in the SHL. Like, I think that is important to see that. And if you could choose it to go any way for MBN, if he was going to have kind of a dull season production wise, that's when you'd want him to turn on. So I'm a little bit inspired by him. And I think he could be the guy who leapfrogs Danielson and Mazur and everyone else if he makes the team the way you guys described.
And also, I will say the style of game he plays would be easier to translate, not just from a physicality. I think Danielson's ceiling is higher than MBN's, but Danielson has the potential to be a play driver, a line driver, the guy who's consistently transporting the puck, running the cycle, maybe playing a key role on a power play. MBN plays more of a bump and go, chip and chase, in and out, like the bang, bang, bang type plays. He's not the guy who's going to be transporting the puck up the ice a lot. He is not going to be the playmaker on the power play. He's the trigger man. He's the guy who stands in the bumper on the half wall and just stands there until you give me the puck and he hammers it at the net. Not that he's completely devoid of these other things, but it's not going to be his calling card in the NHL. If he's playing on a second line, he is very much going to be the support role on that line. He is the finisher. It doesn't go through him, it ends at him. So I think in terms of translatability, him at the NHL level, they will likely ask less of him because that's just who he is as a player. Whereas with Danielson, they're probably going to lean on him a bit more. So there's, that give and take of, he's going to be better, but we're also going to ask him to do a lot more. So do we want to throw all of that on him right away? And again, every organization has a different philosophy on that. And I don't know where the Red Wings will stand because they might throw Danielson in and say, you're going to be the pump and go guy, just acclimate, and then we'll build you up to do more. Every organization is different, but that is probably worth mentioning in terms of what happens if either of them makes the NHL.
All right, there are more players to come, especially, we haven't even done Axel Sandin Pellikka, but we are due for a quick break here to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. More after this. When you think about fast food, you probably picture greasy burgers, sad fries, or something thought out and disappointing. But if you're tight on time, whether you're working, parenting, or digging through hockey trade rumors, it's not like you got time to whip up a healthy, balanced meal. That's why Tempo has been such a solid find. You pick your meals from a 20-plus item menu, and they all cook in just 3 minutes. Seriously, we're talking full chef-crafted meals that don't feel like microwave food. We've tried a bunch, but the tomato Asiago chicken was incredible, and the tangy Baja citrus salmon and rice somehow tasted like something you'd get at a restaurant. And it was ready before we even finished arguing about defensive pairings. Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef-crafted meals from a dietitian-approved menu fresh to your door. Each one is single-serve, balanced, and actually tastes good. No weird freezer-burned hockey puck patties here, and they're made with real ingredients, which is kind of rare when you're this busy and still trying to eat like an adult. There are options for pretty much every diet or preference, high protein, low carb, fiber rich. So whether you're tracking macros or just trying to eat something better than chips, they've got you covered. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. All right, keeping this going, Axel Sandin Pellikka, a player who Red Wings fans have hope for, that they want him to come in and do the Johansson, and even if it seems like he's a little out of place, kind of feel it out and be a solution for the Red Wings on the right side. But probably isn't a hot take to say his most likely path is to spend at least a good chunk of time in Grand Rapids to adjust and get ready for North American ice, the pro game in North America, the physicality, the loss of time and space. Based on what you saw with Grand Rapids, I know it's a small sample. I still think that's probably the most likely path, but we've been surprised by less likely players before. So what do you make of Sandin Pellikka's chances to be a Red Wing next year?
So I put him in the camp of pretty good and really good still means Grand Rapids. But if he is unbelievable in preseason and camp, then you throw him on the roster, obviously kick the door in. The thing with him is his physicality, despite being a little bigger than I think everybody thinks, but still undersized for an NHL defenseman, is a huge adjustment point to the smaller ice in North America. And obviously we saw some of those struggles in the AHL. So regardless of how he does in preseason, that question mark's still going to linger. But what I will say for ASP versus everybody else we've talked about, literally every single other prospect we have talked about, he's the biggest wild card because he has the highest ceiling. Axel Sandin Pellikka at his absolute best could be one of the top point producing defensemen in the NHL someday. And it's just a matter of, does he hit that stride and how soon does he hit that stride? We've seen him win, back-to-back defenseman of the tournament at the World Juniors. He, before injuries, was on pace to smash U20 scoring records in the SHL. The sky is the limit for this guy, but because of the size, because of the positionality, because of going from big ice to small ice, also has the most question marks at this very moment in time.
I think it's important to say he doesn't play a shy or quiet game either. For a defenseman who's not big, he's not Nick Hague out there, but he's still the kind of guy you almost kind of think that he's cut from the same cloth as Lucas Raymond, where it's yeah, you're not big and imposing, but you're not afraid to get your nose dirty or try to use your body when you can. And so for me, that's the first step for a guy like that, where I'm you're not going to live on the perimeter of plays or just automatically lose puck battles. There is something you have to give credit to, which is that kind of size does kind of preclude you from being a given to make it early, but it doesn't completely disqualify you. I completely agree with Brad on what his ultimate ceiling is. And of course, you take it with whatever grain of salt you assign your prospects. And, he could be any range of outcomes between here and what Brad said, but not every prospect has that kind of high-end potential, which is why we're so excited about Axel Sandin Pellikka. I think his tenacity means he could make it sooner than people think, but I just don't think it's likely to overcome how difficult it is. It's more how quickly the game collapses around you. And opposing forwards, especially for, good forechecking teams, they sense that with rookie defensemen and they'll make your life hell. So I still think Grand Rapids is the most likely outcome, and I still wouldn't be surprised if what Brad said happens in terms of if he goes in and seizes it with an outstanding preseason.
It would have to be the camp of a lifetime for me, and I don't think there's anything wrong with him going back to Grand Rapids and him sort of being that slow burn prospect in the minors, getting his feet wet there and really developing his game and his confidence, and then coming into the NHL and just taking off like a rocket. We're talking, Calder level player right away. It will obviously be a big adjustment, I think, for him coming to North America. So why do that at the NHL level with him right now? Like, there's no reason to force him into the Red Wings lineup this year or this upcoming year. Let him go to Grand Rapids. Let him be the guy on the back end. Let him be the power play one defenseman. Let him just do his thing and just let him continue to grow as a prospect. For me, I feel like that's the best approach.
That's also the other thing with ASP. If he goes to Grand Rapids, he very well could be the guy. He would definitely be running power play one, which he probably wouldn't do this year in Detroit. And given his strength is offense, you want him flexing those muscles this year and developing those. And if he makes the Red Wings, he would play a power play. They're not keeping him up if he's not playing on a power play. Might be power play too, but it's still some power play time. But if he goes to Grand Rapids and he's playing a minute 15, a minute and a half of every power play, and he's playing 15 to 18 minutes of even strength, that's a lot of great development. That's going to really acclimatize him. And again, like we talked about the other guys, there's no rule that says he's not the first injury call-up. If we're sitting here on December 1st and, one of the Red Wings defensemen goes down and ASP's 0.8 points per game in Grand Rapids as a defenseman, it's a no-brainer to call him up. But again, he has to control how he's playing down there, and he's beholden to the Red Wings' health, but there's no rule against it.
Think the Red Wings would call up Wallinder before ASP?
I think it would depend who goes down for the Red Wings. If it's a depth defenseman and he's just going to go plug in for like a Johansson, sure.
Johansson's a top 4 defenseman on his team.
He's our third best defenseman.
If he is, I'm going to be disappointed with the Red Wings offseason, and I love Johansson.
Well, that's what I was talking. One, I think he's more likely, especially if it's like a one game kind of thing. Yeah, I think so. Unless ASP is doing what you guys talked about, which is playing outstanding. But you look at the Red Wings lineup. There's a couple things that are red flags for me. Mo Seider, obviously top pair right shot defenseman. Behind him, they have Jeff Petrie, who is going to want to come back to the NHL. It's a possibility. Don't shoot the messenger, but I think it is a possibility that they bring him back on a 1 year, minimum deal, whatever. Petrie wants to hit some milestones. I don't know if it's going to be in Detroit or elsewhere, but ideally that's your like number 6 or number 7 guy. You can't overslot him on the second pair. Okay, then you're going to continue to deploy Johansson on his offside on the second pair. That's perfectly fine, but we've seen that it's workable but not ideal. I don't know that the Red Wings want to be so small behind Seider on the right side. Like Johansson, Axel Sandin Pellikka, that's a small right side of the defense, and that's not Yzerman's MO, and that's not the Red Wings blue line that they're trying to build. So I think what Brad said, which is that are they going to do something in the offseason? That's kind of what I'm waiting to see, and that'll signal just if they make a move, it's not even necessarily taking a spot from Sandin Pellikka. It could construct the defense to be more favorable for him to come in, because really Johansson on his offside and then a smaller rookie on your third pair, that's not ideal. And this is to like Eric Gustafsson plays his offside as well. And what kind of season is he going to have? It would have to be a big bounce back to form. I know Sherratt can play the other side too. Like there's a lot of ifs, and the Red Wings defense is still very, 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 very patchwork.
This conversation could be completely moot in 30 days.
Yeah.
Like we could be rehashing this with totally different outcomes for some of these prospects based on what we've seen in the first few days of free agency.
Yeah, like when Quinn Hughes comes in, that's going to completely change the dynamics of the Red Wings defense.
Well, we'll have no defensive players left because we'll have traded all of them to get Quinn Hughes.
That's perfectly fine. That's Brad's dream. All gas, no brakes, baby. So the last three I'm going to group together, maybe fairly or unfairly, but I think this is more just like these are talented players who to varying degrees could be NHLers, but they would have massive hurdles based on the prospects ahead of them and the roster construction in Detroit. Amadeus Lombardi, and then on defense you have Buium and Wallinder. I think Lombardi leads the pack in terms of what his ceiling is, and I do expect him to be a Red Wings forward someday, barring things going wrong, but he is still, like we had him on the show, such a talented kid. The NHL physicality is still something he has to grow into. Like, I don't know what kind of offseason he's going to have. You hope it's a one with a lot of calories every day.
Professional eater.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, I think Buium's probably a bit behind the other two just because he just finished his rookie season in the A. And I do like his ceiling more than Wallinder if we're comparing defense here. But I think all three of these guys are destined for Grand Rapids out of camp. I think the expectation of these three would be these are the three guys that are running this team for the bulk of the year. Obviously, depending where Danielson and Mazur and all these other guys end up, but these are going to be the, quote unquote veterans.
Core.
They're going into years, 2, 3, 4, like nature of the AHL. But the guys who have been there, done that to lead. And not just lead, dominate. Like, obviously, Lombardi took a huge step this season in terms of his production. Can he take another step from there? Because I don't think he's got a chance in the NHL unless he's over a point per game in the AHL. Just because you can, like, we're seeing it with Berggren right now. He can't go to the NHL and be Berggren. And he hasn't done in the AHL anything more than Berggren did in the AHL. And not that they're stylistically one-to-one, but in terms of size, physicality, role, they're the same. So he's got to be more than that if he wants to play on an NHL third line. He can do it. The talent's there. The hockey IQ's there. And I think that's the same thing that goes for Buium and Wallinder. You guys can't just be guys. Show you can dominate the AHL. Good enough isn't good enough if you want to get a crack at the NHL. Now, where these guys could benefit is if someone gets hurt on the Red Wings and it's like a 2 to 3 game thing and you don't want to disrupt, call it the rhythm that ASP, MBN, or Danielson are in, these are the three they're probably going to pick from to, hey, you're going to come play 2 games on the 4th line and then we're going to send you back. But at least that gives them the opportunity to show what they can do at the NHL level, even if it's in a limited capacity.
I think good enough is good enough. I fully disagree because I think this Red Wings defense sucks.
Okay, if you're talking about Buium and Wallinder, fair.
And if they're coming back with more of the same and they give, Gustafsson and some other, we're going to throw a flyer out there for a depth defenseman who's been bad on every other team he's been on kind of thing, and that's not working out, then even if they're not inspiring, at this point, I'd rather take the shot that we have a Johansson 2.0 where a guy just finds his way in the NHL and can slot in as a perfectly fine number 5 or a perfectly fine number 6. I will take that every day of the week. Not every defensive prospect is going to be top 4, and the Red Wings have too many below replacement level defensemen playing defense. It's a problem. You need another top 4 guy, absolutely, but you also need your third pair to not be a total liability because that also helps your top 4. And if Buium or Wallinder, I'm not saying guaranteeing that they can, but I do think good enough might actually be enough because they don't exactly have a hard battle ahead of them.
If they're going to be comparable skill-wise to some journeyman NHL defensemen, but they're early 20s, I would take that 10 times out of 10 over trotting out again some older guys who are just washed and it's just painful to witness every single game.
A very, 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 very old, decrepit man once said on the show, I'd rather figure out, how did it go? I was just so focused on insulting Brad, I actually forgot what he said.
Nailed it.
I'm leaving that in.
I'm going to assume the one you're thinking of is I can't wait for NHL teams to start playing young players who might be bad versus old players who are bad.
That's what it is. Hey, it was you who said it, Brad.
Yeah.
Well, the Red Wings have that in spades.
So on both sides. And so that's what I think with the defenseman. And Lombardi, I mean, could be surprised, but I still think, Grand Rapids is the most likely outcome. There's going to be a lot of debate, and I think Costa is going to head up a lot of it, but that's overall an early look, pre any, draft, trades, signings, all that free agency changes to the roster where these Red Wings rookies are sat. That took longer than we anticipated.
When you have a deep prospect pipeline, there's a lot of guys who, because the thing with everyone we just mentioned, any one of them could come in, kick the door in, say, I'm here now, and they're Red Wings. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Seider. We've seen it with Raymond. We've seen it with Kasper.
It also helps that the Red Wings are bad, because if they were a cup contender, we would say none of them are. They're more likely to be traded.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but again, there's also reality. Every one of them's in Grand Rapids, right? Like it's the range of outcomes here is very big.
Let's go to the Stanley Cup playoffs. I want to start with the finals. Like, okay, running the finals back. It's another rematch. The first one since Detroit-Pittsburgh. We don't have to talk about the second leg of that. But I think that the way those conference finals, like overall, relative to the first 2 rounds, boring conference finals, but the actual finish, like the last games 5, were hilarious. We'll start with Carolina, Florida, with that weird Paul Maurice, Rod Brind'Amour, like disagreement on the ice. Like very obviously they were disagreeing about something. And well, I mean, it's no secret. I'm a huge Paul Maurice guy. I think we're all big Paul Maurice guys on the show. But his thing is that he wanted Rod to not go in the handshake line with the players because he wants it to be for the players. But that's like a new thing because he hasn't always been like that.
He only did it this year with Toronto. When they played Tampa in the first round, he was in the handshake line.
I appreciate the sentiment of it all, but if you're not pre-arranging that before the series, it's too late.
You can't be doing it when the game's over and you're crossing benches.
Especially as the winning coach telling the guy who just lost, hey, bud,
Yeah.
listen, see my players over there? Don't effing touch them. Stay away.
For me, it's also more confusing because Paul Maurice never played in the NHL, and then he's trying to tell a guy who's, been a warrior, a winner at the NHL level that he can't go to the handshake line, which probably has meant a lot to him during his career. The whole thing was so bizarre. And honestly, if I was Rod Brind'Amour and Paul Maurice came up to me and told me that, I would tell him to take a hike.
If I just got my shit kicked by those Florida Panthers, where like in game, when the Florida was very obviously already going to win the series, Sam Bennett still tried to throw an elbow at my goalie's head. And like
Rod Brind'Amour would fight someone on Florida, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right now.
And then the coach of that team who just beat me was like, hey, like, let's not go into the line, or like, I'm petty. I'd be like, no, piss off. Like, I'm going in the line. The
line means different things to different people. And I think Rod Brind'Amour, being a former player, he would absolutely feel like there's a respect factor involved in going to shake hands with your opponent.
The one argument I heard where I was like, okay, I understand that, is like modern pro sports, there's sleep coaches, there's training coaches, the assistant to the assistant to the assistant has a coach. Like there's so many, these staffs are huge. And too often those lines get like, if you're a player who just lost, you want to get off the ice, you're shaking hands, you're like, who is this? Like,
I just would need to get out of here.
A 6th assistant video coach. Like, what are we doing? And I get that some players feel that way, and that's perfectly fair. But you arrange that in advance, or say only head and assistant coaches in the line, everyone else,
Yeah, like his whole thing is like, this is for the players. We don't want to take attention away from the players, yada, yada, yada. But as he was explaining that, all I could see was Tim Robinson in the hot dog costume. Like, now you are putting all the attention on yourself.
Which might be his whole thing.
I don't know. I'm a Paul Maurice guy, but this one was next level stupid.
That was weird. Anyways, I was like, a very good point was also made. Like, Florida goes to that many third finals in a row. It's a lot of Florida Panthers hockey we've watched. Paul Maurice is great with a microphone, great in front of the camera. There's some overexposure here too. Yeah,
what do you think Carolina does? I know this is probably getting away from what we wanted to talk about, but what do you guys think Carolina does? Like,
sign Mitch Marner.
That actually was going to be my answer.
So they're still going to be the fraud squad.
Yeah. They're going full court press to get bounced. Well, Mitch Marner will get bounced in the 3rd round. That'll be new for him.
That's true.
Why is Rod getting fired and Pete DeBoer's coaching Carolina?
Well, it depends if they go to a game 7 or not.
Yeah, I think Carolina's done with their whole MO of not being able to score. They're going to try to add talent. This was, in theory, for them supposed to be like a take it easy and not like give up year, but just roll with what we have. I think they were surprised by how great the season went, so I think they're going to try to load up.
And obviously it hurt. The Rantanen thing didn't work out for them, but they did get Stankoven and 2 first-round picks. Stankoven was great for them, arguably their best forward in that series.
Taylor Hall was surprisingly good for them this year as well.
And now they have 2 first-round picks to play with to go out and acquire said talent if free agency doesn't go well for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of, apparently half of Buffalo wants out, so there's a lot of RFAs and young talent out there that may need to change the scenery. And if you have 2 firsts and you're not afraid to spend it.
And we talked about how plentiful the trade market is with like early to mid-20s talent, the Red Wings need to be all over that. Tulski's one of the savvier GMs. He knows the advantage of getting a 24-year-old versus a 29-year-old free agent. He'd probably happily pay the assets to get the guy who's 5 years younger to, again, we've talked about it, keep that window open for as long as possible, because hockey's a very fluky sport. It takes a lot of luck. We've seen it with the Blues, with the Capitals. You can take a million kicks at the can and it doesn't happen for 8 years, but that 1 year, everything goes right.
Yeah.
You get it. And I would imagine Carolina is probably trying to build something, because you look at their core of their key players, they're not that old. This window can be open for a very long time for them. So they probably want to keep just adding, and then just takes 1 year.
Yeah. Edmonton, Dallas. Oettinger pulled after 2 goals, kind of hung out to dry. Understand he wasn't the best performing goalie. And the way he was pulled was interesting. Like the timeout, yeah, obviously you got to call the timeout if you're Pete DeBoer. Terrible. Dallas was playing terrible hockey. He lets Oettinger get, partway back to his net. And then it looks like he says, Jake, get the F back here, like pissed off at him. Pulls Oettinger that way. I'm like, I'm sorry, if you're pulling your goalie in a game 5 during a timeout, you're doing that and you're letting him know ASAP so your other goalie is ready and primed, and the team.
Didn't Casey DeSmith give up his first shot?
Well, Oettinger gave up his first 2, so.
And I like the premise of this is an elimination game and you just got to do something different and you can't worry about that goalie's mentality the next game if there isn't a next game and whether it's the right move or not. I don't think I would have pulled Oettinger, but I do understand it.
Well, one is describing a preparation issue, that they aren't ready to start that game. The other is a reactionary thing and realizing, hey, we didn't actually change how we're going to approach the Edmonton Oilers. Now I need to make a knee-jerk reaction, putting DeSmith, who then gives up the first shot. To me, that's just very poor coaching.
And the kicker was after, he was asked about it, and in coach speak, he threw Oettinger under the bus.
Oh, it wasn't even coach speak. He just was like, this guy was terrible. We had to do something else.
And it wasn't even talking about this series, this season. He talked about
he brought receipts, man.
Yeah, for previous years. I'm like, Oettinger, that's your franchise goalie for the next 100 years, dude.
You just signed him.
Yeah.
He came and asked her way out from pulling an iPad going, Game 3 last year, goal 3. Look at his gap control on this piece of garbage.
Right or not, that what it was is that's a guy who's like, I'm going to get fired and I'm just trying to save my job. And even the backpedal was weird. A few days later, he was battling respiratory illness. I'm like, yeah, but he didn't say anything like that in the moment, Pete.
Heavily emotional moment. Things were probably said that, 5 minutes after he walked off the stage, he's like, I'm an idiot. I should not have said that. And his phone was probably blowing up about it. But regardless, he's been a professional coach long enough that you can't throw your long-term goalie under the bus when it was very much a team issue and a preparation issue, which he has control of.
Well, I get it from him. The same reason you pull the goalie, you try to do something different to get a different result, because in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2023, 2024, and 2025, Pete DeBoer lost in the conference finals as a head
Yeah, but
coach.
what's his Game 7 record, Ryan?
You can't get there.
I thought for sure they were going to put Oettinger back in net.
I thought so too.
Starting the second period. I was like, This is just a shake-up. Everybody wake up. Let's get our act together. We're still in this game. And it wasn't.
It's kind of like everyone who's played Florida, right? Are you that bad this game, or are you just playing Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the Edmonton Oilers? And Skinner lets in one bad goal and then is phenomenal. And Bouchard, for some reason, is now a Norris-level defenseman in these playoffs. The two teams who won in the conference finals are now playing each other again. There's a reason they both were very muted in their celebrations, very jobs not finished mentalities, because this was routine for them, and they made it look routine. And so if you lost to either Edmonton or Florida, I get it. You need to change something, because if you want to get to the finals next year, you'll probably have to go through them. But those teams are too good, in my mind, to go in and do something that drastic. Unless you're Toronto, in which case just blow everything up. I think it's funny. They can't come back with DeBoer, right? Is that too reactionary? Because you can't come back with DeBoer and Oettinger. That's weird. That's
What's
awkward.
DeBoer been like? past 7 of the last 9 Western Conference Finals, he's been in it. Like, I don't know what you do. He's got 1 year left on his contract. Yeah, you could get rid of him. Is that reactionary, though, because he's gotten you there so many times? Is there moves that Jim Nill should be doing to shore that team up? Like, Mikko Rantanen went quiet after he decided to go supernova on Colorado. Like, I don't know. Dallas was very disappointing to me in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
I think you need to really like let the dust settle on the season before you make drastic moves like getting rid of your head coach.
I mean, if they come back with him and Oettinger, like I would have to really be convinced that that's not a relationship that's soured. Oettinger signed for the next forever. They just signed him. And if they come back with DeBoer and they're like, no, he's right, they want to move on from Oettinger, hey, I'm on over to Hockeytown. I had a couple people point out, well, he's not that wrong with the stats in terms of like, this is where he doesn't show up in big games. I'm like, yeah, let's just get to the big games first before we... So it's like Mitch Marner, but in net. Like, let's just get there before we're concerned about that.
Oh, Jake Oettinger does poorly against the Edmonton Oilers. Let's look at the NHL save percentage against Alex Ovechkin. I'm sure all those goalies need to be fired into the sun.
Edmonton, Florida, McDavid, Draisaitl, Tkachuk, Barkov, Bobrovsky, Skinner.
Which one?
Both now, because Edmonton is without Hyman, who's out for the rest of the season. Does the rematch go the same way, or do you think Edmonton, this is their year, they're going to do what Gretzky did, what Crosby did? Like,
I've got a feeling this is Edmonton's year. Something feels different about them this year. It's not just McDavid and Draisaitl dragging them kicking and screaming. They've had their moments, but I feel like they haven't even hit top gear yet. Like, Edmonton dismantled Dallas with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins putting up a ton of points, Corey Perry turning back the clock. Who were those? Like, Evander Kane's been producing. Matthias Janmark had one of the goals.
Didn't Jeff Skinner score?
Yeah, he did.
The good.
Say,
I was going to say the good Skinner, but I don't think that's true.
he also played good. Skinner net played good.
Yeah, and again, they've got 3 great D pairings. You know, obviously losing Zach Hyman hurts a lot, but Florida's got a bunch of players who are banged up. I think the series is going deep. It's going to be 6 or 7 for sure. But yeah, just something feels different about Edmonton this year. If Stuart Skinner can hold up in net, they look, saying this against Florida feels wrong to say, but they look like the more complete team right now. I can't point to the roster on Edmonton outside of goaltending, which is the huge question mark, and find a flaw. Their first line is elite. Their second line is elite. Their third and fourth lines are doing more than their fair share. All 3 D pairings are excellent. And the game Stuart Skinner's on, he looks unbeatable. So if he can be on for 4 games in the Cup Finals, I have a tough time seeing anybody knocking off Edmonton right now, even Florida.
The vibes agree. The vibes agree with you, Brad. And what you pointed out is true. Like, I can't remember if it was expected goals or Corsi or something. Every other playoffs without McDavid and Draisaitl was always in the negative, like below 50%. This year, it's like 60-something%. They are getting production from not those guys. And also, McDavid will just turn on the jets and will a goal into the net when Edmonton is not controlling the game at that moment. Like, they have multiple game breakers right now. But Florida is still, I think, like that team, you must be exhausted of hearing me say this, but that team was built in a lab to play Stanley Cup final hockey, and they're still playing at that level. Yeah, they're banged up, but I think to the degree that any team is banged up by the time that they get to the finals. So I say this with so much trepidation in agreeing with you that I think this is Edmonton's year, and I think some of this is going to come down to like the greats of the game, just they will it to be done. Like, I think like Malkin and Crosby found a way, and like there's other Penguins in that series too, and Osgood's glove hand that series. But still, like, I think McDavid will that team into winning, but I feel stupid betting against Florida with how they're playing.
But here's another thing to point out. At the beginning of the playoffs, Edmonton came out flat-footed. Actually, reminded me a lot of Detroit in 2002, where they go down 0-2 quick.
And they win 4.
Every alarm bell in that city is just going off, going, oh my God, what is happening? Since they went down 0-2 to LA, they have played 14 games against the Dallas Stars, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the LA Kings. And they have lost 2 games.
Yeah.
Like, that is insane.
Yeah. I think we're likely to see something truly special from Connor McDavid in this series if Edmonton is to win the Stanley Cup. For me, it's the Kings are the Kings until they're dethroned, so I still think Florida is, on paper, the best team. They have been the entire playoffs for me. That Toronto got really close, and that was concerning for all of 5 minutes in Game 7 against them. Florida just knows how to win. They've been in 3 straight Cup Finals, which is a lot of hockey. Like, they have a lot of miles right now underneath them, but they saw Connor McDavid in the Edmonton Oilers last year in the Stanley Cup Finals. They know what they're in for. They're a team that prepares exceptionally well. I think this will be the toughest test that Florida will have, but I ultimately think it's going to be 6 or 7 for Florida.
I'll go with the cheapest answer here, which is Edmonton in 7.
I'm going to go Edmonton in 6.
Oh, 3 different answers. You got to pick one.
Oh, I'll go Florida in 6.
Okay. I understand some people don't like the rematch, but you don't actually see it that often in the NHL compared to other leagues, maybe. I'm all for it. And another motivation is I want as few teams repeating as Cup winners, and I know it's happened since Detroit, but I want as few repeats as possible to keep Detroit's as special as possible. So that's why I think I'm pulling for Edmonton here. And, to change up the game too, this is a copycat league, and everyone wants to be the Florida Panthers right now. And if we change it up to try to be the Edmonton Oilers, then everyone's just going to go out and
tank for Gavin McKenna.
Yeah, try to get a Connor McDavid of their own, I guess, which is easier said than done. All right, more on the Cup Finals as they start. I think June 4th is the start date, so a little bit of a rest there. Remains to be seen whether that'll cause rust or if you're Tkachuk and Ekholm, better for your health. See as it goes. Jumping back into the NHL draft and prospect profiles, we are going to have more profiles of players we haven't talked about, but we are now going to start to circle back on guys because it is June, the draft is this month, and we want to zero in on who may be the Red Wings pick at pick 13, assuming that's what they keep. And I think one we'll talk about here is we did him earlier on, and he's probably on the fringes of this is possible at 13, but that's the smallest chance, I think, of the guys who could technically fall that far. And it's one of your favorites, Brad. Jake O'Brien. The fact that he's a center means he's most likely to go top 10, if not like top 6 or 7. But Jake O'Brien is a prospect, opportunity to get him. Would you trade up for him? Any changed opinions, anything like that?
Yeah, the cost to go up would be extreme, but if he's probably going in the 5 to 7 range, that's probably a bit rich to get up into. I don't think he's going to fall all the way to 13, but if he somehow gets into that 8, 9, 10 range, you probably pick up the phone and see what you can do, because I think the gap between him and who's likely to be available at 13 is substantial enough that you go, you got a big center who can skate fairly well, play with pace, has elite playmaking, working on a shot, but it's good. It just finds way to create offense. A bit of a power play merchant, but I think as he gets bigger and stronger, he's only going to get better at 5-on-5, because there are a lot of reports that for his size, he is extremely skinny. But that also means quite literally room to grow, which would insinuate maybe there's some significant improvement that still lies ahead for him. And he's a really damn good player. Now, for better or worse, I heard a comparison for him that I actually really like a lot in terms of stylistically what it may look like at the NHL level to varying degrees of talent. Expensive Pettersson.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
But like stylistically, he's got that same kind of dynamic skill without a lot of physicality. The vision is excellent. We don't know mental strength just yet. What level it is for Jake O'Brien.
Where does he spend his summers? Vancouver or Sweden?
Brantford, Ontario, which leaves a lot of questions. No, I actually don't know if he's from Brantford, just where he plays. But yeah, I think that type of talent is just so hard to get. And if it's available anywhere near the Red Wings can get to, they got to be all over that. They don't have the luxury to pass up on that kind of talent.
He's not, I'm not going to call him a complete player, like a top six center who also does it all physically and everything. Like, he's definitely more of a finesse player, the skill player, the high end talent. But I do think he has that high end talent, and it's not guaranteed to be a boom where he could be like a upper echelon, maybe a tier or two below the best players in the league kind of guy. But I think it's possible. I'm trading up for Jake O'Brien. I don't know that it's likely. Brad said it's a bit rich, but I don't think it's impossible. But I think that it's just the fact that he projects as a center, if you believe in him as a prospect, and teams are going to want that. And if he was a winger, it's a different story, because the slight frame and the lack of a, overly physical element means he's liable to drop. But the fact that he does so well as a center and has the accolades and the production to back it up at the junior level, and he's not in a league that's under-scouted, he should go top 10. I would be shocked if he didn't. So teams are that price would be too high to trade up for. That would be a grand slam in my mind in terms of the kind of talent you could add to the Red Wings talent pool if you find a way to get him. Whether he falls or whether you're trading up or a combination of the two, Jake O'Brien changes, not like Gavin McKenna would, or not like, a completely top first or second overall pick would, but he changes the Red Wings prospect pool and the kind of talent they have available. And that's a hope and a prayer and a wish.
Yeah, like, he's a 6'2" right-handed shot 100-point center in the OHL. Like, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to be there at 13 unless there's this crazy run of defensemen that happens, which we thought would happen last year, but I don't think it really materialized. I don't think he's going to be there even remotely close to 13. His skill set's too enticing. The whole package is far too enticing. Like, the fact that he will play center, like, teams are going to trip all over this. So I think it's more likely he's in the top 5 than he even makes it out of the top 10.
Well, a dude named O'Brien, who already spent a year playing in yellow, black, and white, he ain't getting past Boston.
Yeah, they need a center to play and facilitate with David Pastrnak, so that would be a no-brainer for me.
Well, David Pasternak's being traded to the Red Wings, though.
Oh, okay. We're doing the off-season content now.
Yeah, it's June 1st. I know you can't tell by the weather, but...
No, it's been the off-season for the Red Wings for a long time, so it's just always hard to know when we're flipping that switch.
Well, that's... The Bruins are going to take a defenseman at 13 when we flip them that pick for Pastrnak. That's why they can take O'Brien, because they're going to get both positions.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to throw a curveball at you guys here. We're going to do a second one of these players, because I think we should be talking about more than one at a time. He seemed unlikely. Let's talk about another guy who's maybe unlikely, has an equal chance, but in a different way. Roger McQueen.
I think he has an extremely high chance of being there at 13.
Of the big boys in this draft who might slip to 13, he is definitely the most likely.
And then that begs the question, are you like running to the stage, or are you like, what do 12 other teams know that I don't? Because Roger McQueen, Brad wasn't saying big boy as in size, but he is also colossal. He's like the size of Brad and I on each other's shoulders. Extremely talented player. There's the Caden Lindstrom fear for this draft of, do his injuries mean that he is going to be a player who's always going to have back problems, and is that worth the draft pick, even though he is incredibly talented?
So Caden Lindstrom is going to screw Roger McQueen over royally here, because Caden Lindstrom's back problem was thought to be not too serious. The Jackets picked him 4th overall. He played his first game of the year like 3 weeks ago. Like, it was that bad. It kept him out for a full year, and we don't know how that's going to hold up long term. The reports that I've read from insiders say doctors don't seem to be as concerned about McQueen's back injury as they were about Lindstrom's. But obviously, at least one team's doctors weren't concerned enough to take him at 4. So you got to take that all with a grain of salt. That being said, the level of talent that Roger McQueen has, another comp I heard for him that I really like is Blake Wheeler. There's not going to be another player with that talent available at 13. Like, if he's sitting there, the draft board would have to be massively chaotic for anybody else in his tier of talent to be sitting there at 13. The Red Wings have such a deep pipeline. They're one of the teams that have the luxury to take the risk if they like what the doctors have to say. I think Buffalo's in the same boat, and they're picking ahead of Detroit. So that's got to be noted here because they're another team who could absolutely afford to swing on talent like Roger McQueen. But he's a big, what is he, 6'4", 6'5", right-handed center who can skate, has high hockey IQ, elite skill. Like, he doesn't play a super physical brand of hockey, and obviously with the back problems, I don't know if you want him to. But, like, a lot of the concerns I had with Kirby Dach going into the draft, I don't have with McQueen, and they are very similar skill sets, but I think McQueen is a better skater and plays with more pace. So if you want to, on the lower end, if health holds up, I think he's Ryan Johansson. On the higher end, Tage Thompson. Like, at 13... yeah, you don't have the luxury if you're the Red Wings to pass on that unless your doctors are holding up a giant flashing sign that says don't.
He's, I think if the Red Wings are going to get him, it's going to be a combination of him falling to like maybe 9 and then they have to trade up. Like, I just don't, I don't know that I see 13.
It depends what the cost is. Like, are you trading premium assets or premium picks to move up to 9 to draft a guy who has injury uncertainty?
Define premium, because I would pay a decent amount to move up.
I don't know if this does it, but let's say you're attaching 13 a second in like Wallinder. Are you doing that?
I probably would, yeah.
Well, it's also going to depend on how the board's working.
Exactly. Like if he's sitting there at 10, but you're still staring at Brady Martin and Jake O'Brien also being there, I'm not making that trade. But if your top 9 are gone, and now you're looking at it going, it's Roger McQueen or Aitchison or Mertka or it's like, all right, well, that gap in talent is so significant. We got to go up. But if you're sitting there going, okay, it's at pick 10, we're still looking at McQueen, Eklund, Martin. All right, we're either feeling comfortable one of them is going to get to us at 13 or we're going to trade up one pick to get him at 12 where the cost would be a lot lower.
All right. That is a circle back on O'Brien and McQueen. Plenty more to come on prospects as we round out this final month of prospect profiles ahead of the 2025 NHL draft. For now, a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the show before we get into the final segment of this episode. Back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/WayneWheel Podcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, support the show, allows us to do everything that we do, and get access to Evan's Premonitions in the Patreon exclusive overtimes. Let's take some questions from our patrons. Philip Gastineau says, hey boys, how close are we to being the next Buffalo or Utah/Arizona? Maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I think we're closer to being the next laughingstock in the league than we are to being a cup contender.
Right now, they're closer to laughingstock than cup contender. This offseason is going to go a long way. Again, I know one offseason we don't want to put too much stock into, but I think it'll give us a pretty clear picture of the mentality, or at least players' desire to go to Detroit. But again, I'd still put that on management. I don't know if they'll ever be, laughingstock bad, like in the bottom 5 of the league. But man, I'd rather be there than the mushy middle for 10 years. Because they need some superstar talent. But that being said,
tempt fate.
Yeah, I know. But if you're going to be in the bottom 5, this might be the year to do it.
That wonderful point.
Yeah.
The only thing that there's lots of things that differentiate the Buffaloes from the Red Wings. But if the Red Wings make a trade that involves a key player who goes on to another team and ascends to another level, like we've seen with Jack Eichel, that's when the Red Wings, to me, start to enter that conversation.
And also, Buffalo finished concerningly close behind Detroit this season with the way the season ended, just throwing that out there. But yeah, they need something to give them hope.
I was going to ask you guys, and I'm not trying to make this question longer than it has to be, but, season starts today. We're doing our East Atlantic Division preview. Who's below the Red Wings out of the 8 teams in the East or
Buffalo.
the Atlantic?
Buffalo.
If we're doing it today,
right this second,
I think Montreal regresses back to the mean.
But they're such a young team. I can't see them as a likely team to regress. Most of their key players are still in the we're improving window.
Sorry, I mean, like, if we were to start the season, we're doing our season preview where they're going to finish in the season, not like their long-term projection.
Buffalo.
I'll add Montreal in there.
I could be convinced of Montreal. I would say it would be that battle between those two teams.
Montreal's a coin flip. I'll tell you, Montreal's a
Sure.
coin flip. I agree that I'm probably wrong, like statistically, but I think we've seen with the Red Wings, rebuilds aren't linear and you sometimes get better and sometimes you have a weirdly stagnant year. That applies to everyone. We have a little bit of fan bases almost look with rose-colored glasses at everyone but their own team, all the other teams' players, all the other teams' performances. But, I mean, Montreal's going to zigzag too. Overall, in the long term, I think you and Brad are right. Like, they have young players who are really important and are going to get better and they're going to challenge Detroit.
Wait, we didn't include Boston.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Okay,
I'll swap
Did
out Montreal
Brad
for
include Boston?
When they really went off the rails this year, it was after they traded Marchand, McAvoy was hurt, and they were missing a couple key forwards. I'm not saying definitively that they're going to pass Detroit, but they're not as far behind as people are willing to admit. Now, the direction of their offseason could change a lot of things, because I think Boston's the biggest wild card. As of right now, I'd put them in Detroit at a dead heat, fully healthy.
Yeah.
But there is the likely reality Detroit tries to take a step forward this offseason. Boston might hit reset a little bit. I don't see them going full rebuild, but I could see them taking a step back to, accumulate some futures to get a little younger and build for the future. But they might also go the other way. They might be like, no, we still have Pasternak. We still have McAvoy. We still have Swayman. We're going. And then we're sitting here on opening day going, yeah, Boston's definitely better than Detroit, depending how the off seasons go.
I get it's a hypothetical, but I think it's still too early to know. You have to see how the off season is going to go. And I also think for the purpose of the original question, it's a spectrum, right? Like, I get that there's laughing stock and there's cup contender, but do you consider Minnesota either?
No, and that's the worst case scenario for Detroit.
Yeah, they are. Minnesota's the vanilla ice cream of the NHL.
What is it? 8 of the last 10 years, they've made the first round and lost every year. Like, that is the number one thing the Red Wings have to avoid.
All right, let's move on to a more optimistic question. Johnny Cleaver says, place your bets. Who's the next Red Wing, current or prospect, that wins an award? Vezina, Conn Smythe, Lady Byng, etc. And when did they do it?
Jonathan Toews wins the Masterton.
Holy shit, that is actually the most statistically likely answer. God, I hate you.
Okay. I don't see any likely candidates right now. So I'm trying to figure out what story arc could do it. And I don't think it happens this year. But if we're going percentage odds, Sebastian Cossa, Calder.
Okay. Or you can do ASP Calder the way you said.
Yep. Yeah. I just think goalie storyline carries more weight, and I have a harder time. I would be more confident in a 6'5" goalie going into the NHL and doing well versus a 5'11" defenseman and taking it over. I say that as Lane Hudson's probably winning it this year, but again, exceptions to rules. Yeah, it should be Celebrini, but exceptions to rules, not the norm, right?
This is my ultra optimistic, like I know I'm diluted take. In 2 years, Larkin, Selke. I'll take that. But most likely is probably one of what Brad or Evan said.
Marco Kasper, Selke.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 years from now.
Maybe not even that long. His defensive metrics this year were up with Selke contenders this season.
Yeah, are they going to give him the Hart and the Selke next season, though? Maybe.
Are they going to give us the Selke to a guy who plays on a non-playoff team?
He's getting traded?
If you're on a non-playoff team and you're like a plus 22, yeah, I think you have to give it to him. I think those are the rules.
I can't tell if my bit this summer is like ultimate doomer or like annoying optimist.
Yeah, I don't know where I've fallen on that.
Depends
either.
on the week.
Yeah, I'm kind of exhausted. Horrifying question. Udalali says, what do you guys think about getting rid of divisions and just having 2 conferences like the MLS? That way, if and when Atlanta and Houston are added, there won't be 2 divisions with 9 teams. This could lead to a play-in tournament for 7th and 8th seed as well for teams 7 through 10.
I like the concept in theory, but I think the logistics of travel force the divisions. And keep in mind, we watch a team in the East where you throw any team in the Eastern Conference in the Red Wings division and it doesn't matter. It's fine. This is more an issue for the Western Conference. You cannot have the Chicago Blackhawks and the Vancouver Canucks in the same division. Like, it just creates too many problems, and you have to have the unbalanced schedule to accommodate for that. And then if you're going to say, well, we just have two conferences, but we'll have the unbalanced schedule anyway, congratulations, you just built divisions.
Yeah. There's imperfect solutions everywhere. I can see the merit to all of them.
If the NHL isn't going to go back to 1 versus 8 playoff structure, they're absolutely not smart enough to do 2 divisions only.
Let's get weird. Let's go the
Or
NFL
2
style.
conferences only. So
8 4-team divisions.
And I mean, but there's merits to that. This is like one of our off-season episodes.
Who would you put in with Detroit in a 4-team division?
Toronto,
Buffalo, Chicago.
That's not bad.
But they're not pulling Toronto away from Boston and Montreal.
All right, Toronto, Detroit, Boston, Montreal, all original 6.
The original 4.
Yeah.
Ottawa's just sitting there. What the hell?
Yeah, that all the money is going to go to the one division. All right,
Ottawa would be with Montreal.
It would probably realistically be Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, Boston. Actually, probably be Buffalo. So we might get Boston.
maybe, yeah, and like you still play the other, yeah. Again, this is off season. Stop stealing from our future selves. You're gonna hate yourself in August for doing this.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
The Gym says, "Happy June, boys! Only a month away from what feels like the biggest off season in a decade. Do you think the centennial anniversary adds to the pressure to take a bigger swing at making the playoffs? Not any more than already exists. Although I am excited to see the centennial jerseys.
Yeah, I don't think that matters at all. I think if anything, it buys the Red Wings leeway to be a little more patient because it puts some free interest in the team for them this year, where it might get a few more bums in seats that otherwise wouldn't have been there."
Evans RBF says, "Where will Connor McDavid rank among the greatest hockey players of all time if he wins a cup? What's your criteria that would make someone the GOAT in hockey?"
Oh my God, he'd be creeping up on top 5.
He'd be in Mount Rushmore territory.
The Hill, like one of the strongest opinions I hold in hockey when talking about stuff like this is you cannot compare cups of anybody pre-1990s to today, just because 6 versus 12 versus 15 teams is so much different than trying to win with 32 teams. One cup now is worth 4 original 6 cups. Like,
Oh, that's
like-
terrible math.
no, but I'm just saying, like, as an example, like,
Inflation's hitting everyone.
yeah. But it's just so much harder. Like, that's why, like, Crosby is definitely up there for me, because you get 3 in today's day and age. That's insanity. And he didn't exactly have the 0-2 Red Wings behind him in most of those years, right? Ovi getting 1 is massive. Massive. Most players are going to play for about 15 years, and every year, if you just go straight across the board, you have a 1 in 32 chance of winning the Stanley Cup. So if everybody in the NHL plays 15 years, your odds of getting them are 50-50, pretty much. Like, it's insane. So the fact that McDavid's already going to a second Cup final, if he gets one, and just how far ahead of his peers he is, and especially in today's day and age, where I'm seeing it firsthand, these kids are getting trained to be elite hockey players at 5 years old. Everybody can skate. Everybody can stick handle. Everybody can shoot. The worst shot in the NHL would look like Al McInnes in a beer league. Like, it is insane how talented the worst player in the NHL is. So the fact Connor McDavid is this clear cut as the best player in the NHL right now is so severely underappreciated. Like, 1 Stanley Cup and he's in my top 5.
All right, and the last one here is from Jeremy Dahl. Wanted to use his comment to shout out his friend Travis, who he put onto the Winged Wheel podcast and is getting married. So congrats to you, Travis. Best of luck to your wallet. Congratulations to you and the future happy bride, and thanks for tuning into the show. We are going to take this.
Should I also give a shout out to that hockey coach at the tournament in Toronto this weekend that figured out I was in the building because he heard someone yell Mika to a girl on the ice?
As should be. You should be 5th of the most famous Criscos, and I'm including Roxy.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. But when I walked in and first conversation I ever have with Mika's coach is basically, why should I know who you are? Because the other coach picked out he was yelling at a Mika.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. I love you lunatics. So shout out to Coach of I think they were the Ducks this weekend.
Quack, quack. All right.
Quack.
Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Thank you to the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast for making the show happen. And thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. You're the lifeblood of the show. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, that's totally cool. Wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever app you use, and leave a rating. If it's a stars or a review or the thumbs up or multiple of those things, telling a friend about the show like Jeremy did, all of that is a huge help to us. And to our name level supporters, we cannot thank you enough for everything you do for us. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Jennifer Morris, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. The Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Brad, Carl Britannia Naluski, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin, God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingles, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Mr. Kuzi, Podgy713, R.A., Roy Donk, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Card, Stephen Ortlieb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Tiger McDougal, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Wings Fan in Chicago, Iser Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, A.A. Ron, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Axolotl, Sardine Pelican, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Busting It Down Like Evan on a Tuesday Night, C.E. Hayes, Chris Felinski, Clay Adams, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheeseback Space Force, Connor Layton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, DeBoer's Sacrificial Netminder, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boyd, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelchin, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hall, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Marco Kasper, the Task Manager, Matt Keeler, Mitch Minier, Obliging the Big Boy Coming, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.